We're live. Everyone can hear us? Yes? Hello. My name is Vladislav Davidson. I am Tablet Magazine's European culture critic and intrepid man in Kiev. I have been covering Ukrainian Jewish affairs and the Ukrainian, Russian, Jewish, Eastern European political, et cetera, political situation and cultural situation for the last 8 years. And I have been traveling to Ukraine for a very long time, even before the Maidan revolution that transformed everything. And I've been really looking forward to this symposium, which we've been planning for a long time with my friends. So this two-panel symposium has been co-produced and co-sponsored by our friends at the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, which is a fantastic organization which is doing very good work, which you will hear a lot more of in a little bit. We were supposed to be three gentlemen and myself, but as of now, Mr. Boris Loshkin, the head of the Ukrainian Jewish Confederation, the president of the Jewish Confederation of Ukraine, is literally caught in a storm. He is in a boat. I believe he's off of the coast of Spain. He's traveling. He's trying to get back to shore in order to be part of this wonderful discussion with my friend Beryl Rodal and my friend Rabbi Kamenetsky. But as of now, the president of the Jewish Confederation of Ukraine is having technical difficulties with storm weather. So, typical situation. I'm hoping he dials in a little bit, and we will be very, very, very pleased to have him. I will introduce him anyway, even if he cannot join us today. He's here with us in spirit, with great generosity and great interest and great love. He said yes to being on this panel. He is the former head of the Ukrainian presidential administration under President Petro Poroshenko, which in the Ukrainian presidential system made him at the time the second most powerful person in the country. He, after stepping down, became the head of the Jewish Confederation of Ukraine. So he is not an unimportant person and not a badly informed person when discussing issues pertaining to Jews and Ukraine. Joining us live from Dnipro, formerly the town known as Dnipropetrovsk, is Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, who's been the leader of that community for, I think, 30 years, right?
Yes.
Thanks. And joining us live from Canada is our co-host and friend, Beryl Rodal, co-founder and co-director of the Global Commission for Post-Pandemic Policy and a board member of Ukrainian Jewish Encounter. Welcome, Beryl.
Great you got us together, Vlad. Happy to be here.
I'm really grateful that you guys, you gentlemen, found the time. It's really a difficult time for all of us, and we're in between Paris, Ukraine, and Kiev, as the Jewish diaspora should be. The Ukrainian Jewish diaspora always has been. So this is a two-day symposium. We're going to have two panels dealing with issues related to the past and related to the present. So today we're going to speak very broadly about issues facing Ukrainian Jewish cooperation, Ukrainian Jewish community, Ukrainian Jews, Jews of Ukrainian descent, Ukrainians who love Jews, Ukrainians who are happy with Jews, some Ukrainians who may be more happy if other things happened or did not happen. We're going to speak about all sorts of things, about hopefully the Ukrainian-Israeli relationship, certainly about the relationship between Kiev and Moscow, without notice of which no such discussion could take place. But because we will be having the second panel in this little symposium on the 24th, same place, same time, 8 days from now, we are not really going to be talking about issues related to the Holodomor, to the Holocaust, to Babin Yar. For the most part, we're going to set aside historical issues and talk about issues of the present. So I do hope that's okay with everybody. If you really, really, really want to discuss something having to do with the Babin Yar memorial process or the creation of the new museum during the Q&A, I'll allow it. And Rabbi Kamenetsky is very open, and he said we will not disallow any kind of question from an intelligent person asked in an intelligent way. So if you're an intelligent person and you're going to ask something in an intelligent way, we will allow it. Okay, so unlike Poland, where the Holocaust and post-war immigration made sure that Jewish life ceased to exist after roughly 1968, 1975, for the most part, with some exceptions. Jewish life in Ukraine is flourishing, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who are either Ukrainian Jews or Ukrainian citizens of Jewish descent, or their spouses, or their relatives who are part of the community in whatever way. So Ukraine still has a Jewish community, unlike other parts of Europe, and it is a very important part of the European Jewish diaspora. After France, depending on you count Russia and United Kingdom, Ukraine probably has the fourth largest Jewish diaspora in Europe, and it is an important community. It is a community that is fully engaged in the society that it lives in at every level, including in prominent leadership positions. So as special as it is, the current president of Ukraine is a Ukrainian citizen of Jewish descent, or Ukrainian Jew, or however it is he wants to define himself, but he is openly open about his Jewish descent. He made very funny quips about it during the election in 2019 when he became president. I've discussed his Jewish roots with him. He had made some very affecting speeches about his own thinking about the Holocaust. He has a good relationship with lots of people in the European Jewish community. And so Ukraine is one of 3 countries in the world that has a Jewish president and or head of state. If you're interested who the third one is, during the Q&A, ask me again. And if you have not Googled it by then, I will tell you who the third Jewish head of a government and state is outside of Israel and Ukraine. But leave it to the Q&A. I think it's important to say, for those of us who don't spend a lot of time in Ukraine, like Rabbi Kamenetsky does, and the way Beryl Odal does, is that there was never a process of decommunization in the 90s and the aughts. Ukraine lost 20 years. Ukraine did not take the opportunity to create a new political nation in the 90s. There are complicated reasons for that, political reasons, economic reasons, reasons having to do with other things in the post-Soviet space and their next door neighbors, which are of course very difficult, some of you may know. But for the most part, the anthem of the country was changed and the national flag was changed. But many things about the country were not changed. Lots of things about people's mentalities did not change. Lots of things about the way the economy works and is structured did not change. Lots of things about the ideal of the nation did not change. All that changed or began to change after the Maidan Revolution of 2013, November 2013, which concluded in late February of 2014, which led to remarkable events, an invasion of a country, and the real creation of a political nation, not an ethnic nation, but a political nation. And we are watching in real time some of the most interesting events take place in Europe. And in this political nation, Jews play a very prominent and very interesting part, and they've been embraced by other parts of this very multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multicultural, and multi-religious nation. So with no further ado, I'm going to give opening remarks to Rabbi Kamenetsky, live from Dnipro.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. To you, Vladislav, and to you, Beryl, thank you very much. And to the most respectful publication tablet that we always watch with big respect and read. Talking about Ukraine, I'm here since 1990. And the people of Ukraine are very nice people and not too active. They're mostly passive and nice. And I never met really anti-Semitism among them. You know, as long that you don't have somebody on top pushing it, like a government or some political leaders, like in the past, they are mostly very nice people. And And so for us, we came to a very comfortable place. We came to a nice place of good people who were very welcoming, very outgoing. The Jews are also very big believers. They are not asking questions. They have like plain emunah, like belief. We call them the Baal Shem Tov's Jews, you know, so they were very easy to work with, even though many of them were secular and far from Judaism. So the rabbis who came here in the beginning, except for the beginning of the beginning, when it was still the Soviet Union, but since the falling of the Soviet Union, we came to a very comfortable environment from the Jews and also the Ukrainians, starting from the Ukrainian officials of the city and the state, the government officials. So, and then you start looking at two nations who are close to each other, the Polish people and the Ukrainian people. And in any survey that you have, how do you feel about the Jews? How do you feel about having a Jewish president? So in Poland, you would have like 70% negative answer about the Jewish people. And in Ukraine, it's 80, 90% in favor of Jews, which we saw when people voted for Zelensky to be a president. 80% voted for him and they didn't care about his being Jewish. They just liked him as a person and they were believing that he's gonna do good for them. So how to explain the difference in the Polish and the Ukrainian, we will leave it for another time. But the fact is that we really live in a very, very good environment and Jewish people see their future here. They feel good. They want to have children. They want their children to live here. And just to give you one number, the anti-Semitic party Svoboda, which is openly anti-Semitic, is not passing to parliament already for the second. They don't even have 3% of the votes. So imagine that not even 3% of the people of Ukraine vote for an anti-Semitic party. When you have Poland and other European countries where it's 30-40%. Because I think many of them believe that Jews is a blessing for them, and they represent good life and they are devoted to Ukraine. I'm just going to finish because I want to hear Mr. Rodel Berl. But you know, in the time of the revolution in 2014, the Jews were very active in supporting Ukraine. They were supporting the Maidan, and they were supporting many of them fought at the war. Many of them helped. You had even Jews with long beards, with big yarmulkes, fighting, you know, in the Ukrainian commando to protect Ukraine. So that also gave a lot of good appreciation to the Jewish community. So I think we are lucky to work here. And as you said, there are 500,000 Jews living in Ukraine officially, but there are many more who are not yet out of the closet for different reasons. Maybe they don't know, maybe they know, but they still don't feel comfortable to come out. With so many Jews living to Israel, immigrating, the number is not becoming less, because every day we meet new people who find out that they are really Jewish, have Jewish roots, like you said, but they position themselves as Jews. I must say one more thing, that most people with Jewish roots are very proud of the roots. They are not hiding it. They are proud of it, and it doesn't matter if it's from the father's side, from the mother's side, from the grandfather's side. They would say publicly and openly, and usually be proud of their roots, Jewish roots. So this is my opening remarks. I can continue on talking for 7 hours, but I want to hear you.
We're going to be here for a while, Rabbi. So
yeah.
For the second part. Beryl, my friend of 8 years now, welcome to our Canadian friends. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization that you represent and the good work that you do and how it got started, even maybe a little bit?
Well, thank you, Vlad. I'll do that, but first I should thank Tablet for organizing this series, which is timely. Tablet is great. So those who aren't already subscribing to or in some way associated with Tablet should immediately after the call, not during this call, but immediately afterwards, make repairs. All power to Tablet. And it's great to be on a platform, not only with you, Vlad, but with Rabbi Kamenetsky, who I won't say that Dnipro is the center of the world, though in some ways it's unique. Rabbi Kamenetsky is a Chabad rabbi, and we should provide special thanks and recognition for Chabad, which is now present, I think, in 30 cities in Ukraine. An extraordinary story. The world's largest Jewish community center is where Rabbi Kamenetsky sits right now, I think, at this moment, the Menorah Center, which is an extraordinary facility, visible from space. I am not exaggerating. You have to have the right satellite. But I had the privilege with my wife, Aldi, who is from Chernivtsi or Chernovitz, a fabled city. I had the privilege of spending Yom Kippur 2 years ago with Rabbi Kamenetsky in the synagogue, which he leads. And during the Elah services on Yom Kippur, there were over 1,500 people at those services. The gates of heaven are always open at Ne'ilah, but they were especially wide open. That Ne'ilah in Dnipro 2 years ago. It's extraordinary. I don't know where else you would have seen such outpouring of emotion, intensity as experienced in Dnipro with you, Rabbi Kamenetsky. So it's wonderful, wonderful. And the word intense actually is a good word to apply to Jewish life in Ukraine. It's a unique place. I promised to say a word about the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, so let me do that. The Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, we're about a little over 10 years old. There was founded by 4 like-minded people, myself and Alti, my wife, and Jim Temerty and Adrian Kartnitsky. So yin and yang, Jewish, Ukrainian, male, female. But the idea was to shine a bright light on this relationship, which is not well understood. It's not well known. Even where it is known, it's not properly understood. And people tend to think about neuralgic moments, often crises moments, but it's a 2,000-year history, 1,000 years for sure. The first testimony of Kiev's existence is in the Geniza of Cairo, which is a treasury of monuments. It tells of a real estate issue of the Jewish community in Podil in Kiev, which exists to this day. That's 10th or 11th century. So the first evidence of Kiev in history is a Jewish story in the Geniza. So it's a story that goes back a long way. We're not here to talk about history, but I did want to say that it's important to note, and one of UJE's objectives is to enable, a principal objective is to enable empathetic understanding between Jews and Ukrainians who've lived together side by side, very, very long periods of normalcy and mutual interaction and cultural enrichment mutually, to degrees that people don't properly understand. So UJE's story is to tell this story, a story of the two people that is incomplete with each without the other. So our stories are incomplete without each other. Our mission is to tell that story and enable closer mutual understanding with a view to the future. And there is a future. And what's interesting about the topic we're discussing is that there are probably more Jews going back to Ukraine to conduct business, settle there, than Ukrainians are going back to Ukraine. So Rabbi Black tells me. So it's quite special. I happen to be in the baggage section of Boryspil Airport in Kiev before the pandemic. And bags were coming in from 5 flights as I was waiting. All were from Tel Aviv. it's who would have thunk that? It's an extraordinary relationship. There are enormous, deep, surprising ties linking the two communities and countries. I remember Ukraine has an extraordinary, it's an extraordinary country. Ukraine has an extraordinary institution called the Council of Churches and Religious Organizations, UCCRO, the Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations, which brings together all the faith leaders, Baptists and Orthodox of various varieties and Jews. And it is not an interfaith group.
Two
It is-
imams also.
Hmm?
There are also two imams on that council.
Yes, I'm saying it brings together all the faith leaders. And unusually, I think unique in the world, it is not an interfaith group in which people talk to each other. It is the caucus of religious faith leaders who represent freedom of conscience to the society. They are the spokespeople and advocates for freedom of faith and thought in the society, working as a group and a unity. So I was present as a guest of a UCCRO visit to Israel. And there we were in the Knesset or in cabinet groupings and with Israeli leaders, and all the conversations were in Ukrainian. Remarkable. Yuli Edelstein and Metropolitan Shevchuk. Where do these things happen? How otherwise does it happen? It's one of the vignettes that tells you something about this unique society and evolving relationship. So what we need to bear in mind in talking about Ukraine is that the great majority, we're talking about Jews now in a Ukrainian context, the great majority of Ashkenazi Jews alive in the world today have their origins on the territory of Ukraine. And that relationship is being rediscovered by people visiting, coming back. I remember a dinner Shabbat in the home of Rabbi Bleich, chief rabbi of Kiev in Ukraine. And there were some very well-dressed, prosperous Israeli Jews with their spodeks and streiblach, all dressed up for Shabbat. And I assumed they were business people. So I said, well, gentlemen, you're from Jerusalem. What are you doing in Ukraine? And they said to me, oh, we're on a pilgrimage to the high holy places. I said, I'm sorry, you've come from Jerusalem to be in Ukraine on a pilgrimage over? Yes, Ukraine is the home of the great Hasidic leaders. Ukraine is, in fact, the homeland of origin. The forests of the Carpathians are where Hasidism was developed and created. Rabbi Kamenetsky spoke about the Baal Shem Tov. Well, the Baal Shem Tov, great Ukrainian figure. And one of the hopes of the leaders of UJE, certainly the hope of the chairman, is that if we're successful, Ukrainians will by and large recognize as one of the Ukrainians they're proudest of will be the Baal Shem Tov, as a hero of Ukraine, as it were. So it's the origin, the place of origin of Hasidism, also of Hebrew and Yiddish languages and publishing. It's not the origin of the Hebrew language, but where Hebrew publishing was created, where publishing wasn't possible in other places, the homeland, as it were, of Yiddish. So there's a lot about it. And it's also important to look at the community in longer perspective. It can't say whether it's the second or third or fourth largest Jewish community in Europe. We don't know how many there are, as Rabbi Kamenetsky was telling us, but you're probably happier to be in the street and going to synagogue or just walking as a Jew in the streets of Kiev or Dnipro or Chernivtsi than you would be in Budapest, Vienna, or Berlin. So it's a place where Jews can be happy, be themselves. That's not to say that there aren't issues. Always issues, but they're openly discussed. And it has already been mentioned that it's unique in having presidents and prime ministers who are Jewish without there being issues. And it's not a one-off thing. It's been the case for some time. So it's a positive story. The main message of, I think, the rabbi, and it would be my message, and I'm sure Boris Loshkin's, soon as he comes aboard, will be that the story of Ukrainian Jewry today is a positive story. It's the product of a long history, a particularly brutal, tragic, challenging one in the past century, but it's a history that goes back 1,000 and even 2,000 years. So there was.
I would like to add.
Bevakasha.
I would like to add, Beryl, I would like to add that every time we have a new mayor or a new governor or a head of the SBU, which is like the FBI, CIA, I give them the album that you published in Ukrainian and in English. I give it to them in Ukrainian about Jews and Ukrainians coexisting for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable book, you know, because when you give them the book and they read it, you know, it makes them really feel very comfortable about the good relation that the Jewish community and has with the Ukrainian establishment here. And it's something that I want to thank you again now for publishing the book. And generally, the before you started working here, Beryl, the Jewish-Ukrainian encounter, there was some parts of the Ukrainian society where we couldn't reach, and only you were able to influence them. Some establishment in Kiev that were still very closed and not ready to accept a prospering Jewish community, and because you came from your with the Ukrainian people of Canada, Timothy, your partner, and how do you say, специально подход, a very, как сказать, особый подход. Vladislav, help me with a special,
a particular,
very unique, approach, and it really helps.
Well,
you know, so you
how can
your work
I?
is really appreciated here. You know, it's
Well, Дякую.
Дякую.
Thank you for the kind
Sorry
words.
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make
A
sure.
small,
Because you are so humble. You didn't even mention the album you published. I use it.
oh well,
I use it in my
thank
work.
you. So if it's proper, if I'm not misbehaving, let me take this opportunity and invite all listeners to write to me, write to UJE, the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter. We'll be happy to, anyway, you can write to us and we will happily send anybody who wants the books. We've published more than one. We published several, gold medal award winning catalog, which is the product of a museum exhibit. The book that the rabbi refers to, we'll be happy to send them to you free of charge. You can have it in online form. You can have it in hard copy form. That's what we do. We're here to make the world better. And what can I say? An example of the work of UJE, an example of it is Jim Temerty, who's the chair. Jim Temerty, who's the chair, for example, has funded UJE. Jim Temerty has funded. He is an Orthodox Christian from the town Natan Sharansky comes from, Stalino, Donbass, and who funded chairs in Jewish studies at the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv. So you have an Orthodox Christian funding chairs in Jewish studies at the Catholic University of Lviv from Toronto. That's the nature of the world we live in and should recognize that we live in. So what can I tell you? Museums. We place emphasis on telling the story. Stories are very important, and people need to have a better idea of what the stories are, what the story is. That's our mission.
Thank you, Beryl. Rabbi, let's go into some more structured questions, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion, and we'll get into.
Okay.
I'm just very curious about the needs and concerns of your community as they have evolved over the last 30 years of you having been there. You reestablished organized Jewish life in the city. It's a very wealthy city. I don't know if people know this, but Dnipro is one of the sources of industrial wealth in the country, and it also has a very large Jewish community, which is not the case for, let's say, my ancestral Chernowids. Different cities in Ukraine have very different situations, even in terms of strength of the business community, in terms of local demographics. You have all of those things just because you are in the city which has the most wealth and the biggest number of Jews who are willing to go to synagogue and send their kids to day schools. So just talk about a little bit about the needs of your community and how they've changed since you've gotten there.
So, the spiritual needs and the religious needs is all taken care of. We have 10 synagogues in the city, and more Jews are interested in Judaism, are getting more spiritual, closer to Yiddishkeit. But we have to remember that most Jews here are poor in Ukraine. There are wealthy people, wealthy Jewish members of the community. But if you look at the numbers, you have a big amount of very poor Jewish people that the community has to take care of them. And this is where the American Jewish community is coming in. We are partners with Boston, with the Combined Jewish Philanthropies in Boston. It's like the Federation of Boston. So they're our partners, and together we started the Jewish Medical Center, just to make sure people get good care, medical care, so they live longer. We have the JDC, the Joint, who are doing unbelievable work here. 7,000 elderly people get help every day. So this is the difference between a community in the US or in Europe and in Ukraine. In Ukraine, you need to take care of the Jews, of their needs, of their medical needs, of their food, of all the social needs, welfare needs of the Jewish people. And this takes a lot of our energy and time with our good partners. We still have a life expectancy that is much less shorter than in civilized countries, so we need to work on that. People live 10 years less here than in Israel or in Europe or in the US. So we need to understand the reasons and work on it. For example, Sunday we are starting a big mass vaccination for the whole population, because people here don't get the understanding that you need to vaccinate. So we as a Jewish community, together with the Ukrainian Ministry of Health and with the help of our Boston partners, we will be the official station for the vaccination for Pfizer vaccine in Menorah Center. Just to be, because people believe the Jewish community, and if it's going to be us doing it, more people will come and do the vaccine. And I'm talking about the general population.
Yeah. So to supplement what you said, during, for example, our visit to the Menorah Center, the extraordinary medical facilities within the center are available to the community, the broad community, not only Jews.
Yes, yeah, we are now expanding.
And
when we talk about the vaccine, the government of Ukraine is trusting us to be like the official distributors, and we are starting Sunday. There's going to be thousands of people a day that will be vaccinated in the Jewish Center, in cooperation with the ministry. I think it's the trust that they have towards us is very, very. I'm very emotional about the fact that they trust us to do a good job and to make sure that people agree to do the vaccine.
Well, I don't want to embarrass you, Rabbi Kamenetsky, but you can take some credit for having earned the trust of the entire community, not just Jewish community, the Dnipro community, and of the government and people of Ukraine. Dnipro is a closed city during the Cold War. It was the center of the Soviet Union's nuclear and missile technology and basis. And it took some time for the culture to change, and it's got an extraordinary and negative parts of the history as well, which will be talked about, I'm sure, in session 2 of this panel. But there are storied cities across the country, across Ukraine, and young people coming aboard, discovering their Jewish identity in a very inclusive way. So Altje and I had a conversation with an extraordinary group of American international voluntary association called Project Kesher, which I believe works with you, and they're doing the most interesting things. The most interesting things to bring people into, first of all, into the world, into communication with each other in a uniquely, I think, Ukrainian Jewish way. Ukraine is different. I think a special kind of Jewish identity may well be emerging in Ukraine. As I say, we can't even determine how many people, you said this, you would associate as Jewish in living in Ukraine, related to Ukraine. There are at least 500,000 Ukrainian Jews living in Israel. And this is a relationship which is developing and flourishing, that you're helping to build. Three of the leading economic and financial leaders of Ukraine who are Jewish are all from Dnipro. So it's a special place, but we keep using the word special. We keep using the word intense. This characterizes the relationship. Are there problems? There are, but these are the problems Ukraine as a whole faces. The problem of emerging from statelessness over a long period, the problem of building a new political nation, as Vlad was pointing out, the problems of the periods of Soviet repression, the problems of corruption, the problem of building inclusive, honest, effective government. And these are problems Jews face as they face with other Ukrainians. So these are shared challenges. So the key words are renaissance and meeting challenges together. But I don't want, it's not our objective in this panel to be boosters, though it may sound this way, but it's justified. It's a positive story, especially in a European context.
It is a positive story. Rabbi, can I ask you, I actually have a question that came before the panel on the phone with one of your colleagues, another foreign rabbi, well, not a Ukrainian, a citizen of another country, a rabbi who is, did we just lose Rabbi Kamenetsky? No, he's here.
No, I'm here.
Good. One of your colleagues asked me to have you think about openly whether Dnipro and what goes on there and the issues you face are universal to other communities. Are your issues the community issues of Odessa, of Chernowitz, of Lugansk? Lugansk has problems, clearly, but Kiev, are the issues that you faced by other rabbis with other communities that they shepherd?
I think everywhere we need to make sure that the poor are taken care of, the Jews in need. That's everywhere the same. Jews in this city feel comfortable because there are so many of us and our presence is very felt. But this is just the feeling that when you come to Dnipro, you feel comfortable to go to the Yamuka, you have many Jews, and there are 10 shopping malls around the synagogue, all Jewish owned. So you have the menorah, the Chanukiah, and Hanukkah lighting there. But this is the feeling. But really, the whole Ukraine has the same issues. But what Beryl mentioned about the statelessness, I think things are changing thanks to our president. It took him a while to realize what to do, but now he's really taking control over the situation. People feel it. I think there is much less corruption, and most people believe him and trust that he will change the future of Ukraine. So I think it's really the same. We live in the same country with the same issues. Small pensions, very small pensions, $60, $70. Bad ecologia, very bad. The breathing, the water, and everybody's hoping that we will become part of Europe. So all the rules of Europe will also work here, for cleaner air, cleaner water, less corruption, even though it's becoming less and less, the reason why the 2014 revolution happened, because we had a president who was stealing from the people billions of dollars. And the kickbacks had to go from the city budgets, from the state budgets to Kiev. We don't have it anymore. The money goes to the people. And you see roads that are being built, schools are being built, hospitals are being built. The tax money is really going to the people. You don't have any more the kickbacks going to Kiev. There might be some corruption on a lower level, but really we see big changes here. But again, you know, Ukraine, there is the small shtetl and the big shtetl and the bigger cities. I'm not sure the smaller shtetl have a big future because many Jews move. They move from the small shtetl to the bigger shtetl, to the bigger cities. In my region, for example, Jews like to live in Dnipro. They move from Pavlograd, from Nikopol, from Kamenskoy to Dnipro, and the same is everywhere. There are many who move to Kiev, you know, because there is big opportunities in Kiev. So it's this is the situation.
Yeah, but it is the case that Ukrainian Jewry is becoming more and more urban and are moving out of, as the rabbi says, of the small towns and shtetls into the bigger cities, and probably most now live in big cities, and that is a demographic trend that will continue. We have lots of interesting questions coming in, and I'll just start kicking them around. A lot of people are interested in the question of anti-Semitism. Obviously, it's the first question that anyone always will ask about the Jewish-Ukrainian situation. Beryl, very briefly, statistics. I mean, you deal with this for, I mean, let's not say a living, but this is something that you work on professionally. What is the situation as an outside observer of Ukraine and as a friend with anti-Semitism statistics?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't work on this professionally. I'm not a professional. We're all volunteers. And I'm certainly not a professional anti-Semite. But it's a vexed issue. I think first of all, are we talking incidents, cases of anti-Semitic violence, arson, beatings? Very few in Ukraine. This is a separate matter from anti-Semitic sentiments and expressions and emotion. By and large, I think Jewish people are more comfortable, less subject to harassment and the negativity in Ukraine than perhaps anywhere else in Europe. But you know, this is much studied. The ADL has the best of these studies, I think, and it's, you know, I'm not sure I entirely trust the statistics. I think the statistics both overestimate and underestimate the issue, but anti-Semitism is an issue everywhere. It's less of a practical issue in Ukraine, I think, as a matter of people's experience, but there are always clouds in the sky. I mean, Jews, the expression used to be Jews live with a valise under their beds. Some because they're expecting the Messiah to arrive at any moment, so they're ready to go. Others because they expect to be turfed out of the country they're in at any moment. The impression I have is that the world is not zero risk. And you can't predict the future, but I think a positive future is in train of being built in Ukraine. People are generous, open. There are historical issues that need to be more fully, honestly, empathetically aired. But I don't want to get into the very important historical legacy for Jews and Ukrainians and Ukrainian Jews, etc., which is the subject of an entire event. But that's a key issue that needs to be dealt with. Who are the heroes? They are perceived in somewhat different ways, but it's possible to deal with these issues, provided the society is mature enough to deal with them in an honest and open way. I'm sure you would agree, Rabbi, maybe?
Yeah, I would like to add that I know some numbers. I think there were last year events, 95 events in the whole Ukraine. Event is also a swastika, some comments, no really beating of Jews. Compared to Germany, which has, I think, less Jews today, and there were like maybe 1,500 events. So really, we are looking at a very small number of events. You know where you see anti-Semitism? When you read in the internet comments, by the comments, I think you have like some anti-Semites who just a whole day write anti-Semitic comments, but really in the street with the people, you don't feel it. And like you mentioned before, in Brussels, a Jew with a yarmulke cannot risk to walk at night. He will definitely get hit. And some areas of Paris, in Berlin, like you mentioned, you don't have it in Ukraine. Firstly, because you don't have the Arabs, the radical Arabs. You know, when the Gaza conflict happened with Israel, some student wanted to make a demonstration. So the local authorities in Kharkiv and in Dnipro called them and said, listen, you are a very nice guest here. You want to finish your studies to get your diploma, but behave. No demonstrations, nothing against the Jewish community, against the Jews. So they were all sitting quiet. When in Europe, we saw these violent demonstrations against Jews and hurting Jews, and in New York City, but not in Ukraine. So I think the situation, like Beryl said, I totally agree. And I think it's a lot thanks to the work of the SBU. They really do behind the scene work with different groups of neo-Nazis, controlling them, total control, and not letting them do anything. They're very professionally dealing with it. And I know how they do it.
The Ukrainian intelligence services do have somewhat of a control on. I mean, those groups are infiltrated both by Russians and by the Ukrainian intelligence services. There's not a lot of them, but there is a war on, and there are such issues, and the government does take very good care of it. And
anytime you hear about anti-Semitism in Ukraine, it's Russian propaganda. I'm telling you, the Russians like to portray Ukraine as an anti-Semitic country. This is
an issue.
Yeah. These are wars of memory and wars of the present. May I add, Rabbi Kamenetsky? Privately, we call each other by our first names, but I think the rabbi is owed a lot of respect. I remember being with you at your table, Erev Yom Kippur, and in the synagogue on Yom Kippur, and present with us were uniformed Ukrainian soldiers, Jewish, in the Ukrainian national uniform, defending the homeland. It's a complicated relationship. It's a war that is tragic. I don't believe justifiable. And it's not a comfortable situation when you've got Russian Jews living on the Russian side of the border, Ukrainian Jews living on the Ukrainian side of the border, often related to each other. And it's interesting how there's been a post-Soviet Union transformation of Jews of Ukraine into Ukrainian Jews. That's one of the most interesting developments and it's an evolution. Yes. I would like at some point, when invited by the moderator, by my friend Vlad, to talk about the diaspora issue, but only when invited to do so.
We'll get to it. I think there's an interesting set of questions that I got from several people about Jewish cemeteries, some of which are seen to be under threat and some of which need just money put in to take care of them for conservation's sake. Is that something that is being done on a wide enough scale? Is the UJE involved in that? Tell us a little bit about that, Mr. Beryl.
I'm going to defer to the rabbi. I'm talking about basically fundamental religious, you can't call them institutions, but obligations, right? Cemeteries, I leave it to the rabbi. Happy to comment, but only after the rabbi has spoken.
It all depends on the local Jewish community, if they are active enough to work with the local authorities to preserve the cemeteries and to fix them up. There are some international organizations who are ready to help, but you need to have a strong local Jewish community that will be working with the city officials, because you have big money that want to build shopping malls and big projects, and it's usually in the center of town. So it's not about anti-Semitism or it's just about business and history. So it really depends on how much power do the local communities have, and if they are able to, once being able to get it back, to really show that they are able to fix it. So it's very big expense, to put a fence and lighting and fix the kvarim in the cemetery. So there are some places with issues. I know that in Lviv there is a big problem, in Lvov, because Lvov is a big city with big business, and the mayor of Lvov probably is looking for the business and for taxes for the city. I'm not sure about the details, but I think mostly it's being dealt with.
You were going to invite me to comment? I'd be happy to.
Yeah, let's finish that one briefly. I want to go to the next one, but yeah.
It's a very important subject.
Please.
So it's very important, in my view. We're getting slightly into the terrain of the next session, but we're a week away from the 80th anniversary of the launch of Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union through Ukraine, beginning with Ukraine. It is the launch of the Holocaust. So what we have today in Ukraine are cemeteries. Some very large cemeteries, like the cemetery in Chernivtsi, in Chernovitz, 55,000 extant gravestones. And we were involved in the digitization, restoration of, and there's a lot of good work going on, but there's a lot that needs to be done to restore Jewish cemeteries. It's an issue that's getting attention. It needs, as the rabbi said, more attention, a lot of it at the local level. The Berdichev cemetery, for example, needs attention. But a much different issue, a vital issue, is the issue of mass graves. These are small places, big places. The most famous is Babin Yar. It's a neglected issue. It makes my skin crawl when I talk about it, but there are in the order of 2,000 such mass graves on the territory of Ukraine alone, not tended. People still dig, sorry to mention this, still dig into them looking for gold. So the people who lie in those cemeteries are not properly buried, not properly respected. Many of the places are unknown, though we do know where nearly the most of them are. But this is a subject that's been neglected by the authorities, and I'm sorry to say also by the organized Jewish community. There are reasons for it, but on the 80th anniversary of the launch of Barbarossa and the commission of these great crimes, something in the order of 2 million bodies lie in unmarked mass graves. Big issue, still neglected.
That is very important. I didn't actually know it was that many cemeteries. I thought
they're not cemeteries. They're not cemeteries. They're not exactly what they're not. They are unmarked mass graves.
Berl, I think I heard a number 5,000. This is what Igor Shupak, your friend Igor Shupak told me.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll have to consult him. I had a message from him today, but it is accepted that the figure is in the order of 2,000. It's a major issue. It's the last, I think, untended bit of business remaining from the war, untended by Germany. So anyway, it's a big subject. It should be addressed maybe the next session, but it's an issue. We would not have, our work today would have been incomplete without its being brought up.
Yeah, I think it is important, but we're going to get back to that in a week and a half, in a week and a day. Please join us on the 24th. We're going to be discussing those memory issues. Back to the present, and speaking of Jews in trouble, Lugansk and Donetsk, two cities under occupation, had tremendous, especially Donetsk had a very large Jewish community. And I know most of them, or a large number of them, had to relocate as IDPs, and many of them went to Israel. Rabbi, could you tell us something about what the situation is with Jews from the occupied territories?
Those who are left there, I can't believe the fact that Jews still live there, and I know some of them who didn't go anywhere. The situation there is terrible. You know, just people can't leave their home. That's why they are stuck. But the young people are living. And I probably in 10, 15 years, there will be no Jews living there. Just the people who are middle-aged don't want to immigrate. They don't want to leave their homes. But they live all over Ukraine also. You know, in every city, in every big city in Ukraine, there are people from Donetsk and Lugansk. I know that my colleague Rabbi Vyshetsky is in touch with the Jews in Donetsk, and my colleague Rabbi Sholem Gopin, they both live in Kiev now with their communities. With those who moved to Kiev, he's helping the Jews in Lugansk, but there may be 5% or 10% left of the numbers that were there before the war. Very few.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily sad, and it's decimated living community. Yeah.
So there was old Jewish woman that got sick. You know, the medical services there are very bad. We sent an ambulance to bring her here, and she didn't make it to Dnipro. She died on the way. This was less than a month ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, we sent an ambulance. It couldn't get there immediately. The border didn't let. It took a few times. By the time the ambulance was able to go and meet the other ambulance, she passed away.
That's very sad, and it's what happens during a war. Speaking of which, one of our listeners asked about the relationship between the organized Ukrainian Jewish elites and the establishment, or whatever we want to call it, and what relationship they have to their Russian counterparts, and where those conversations take place, when they do take place, when you have something to discuss.
Okay, so first of all, we are a free country, democratical. You can say what you want, think how you want, express yourself. In Russia, nobody is talking. They're afraid. I just want to mention that 17 rabbis were kicked out of Russia. I don't know if you are aware of it.
No, I was not aware.
17 rabbis were kicked out.
When?
In the last 5-6 years. You know,
why?
For different kind of reasons, because they were too free and too open and too Jewish. You know, I don't want to get into the details. So it's a conversation that is not an even conversation. You know, we all we have to do is agree about not to agree, and to feel bad for them living in a place where they are not able to express themselves, to be open, to everything that is so important for us. We really appreciate the freedom and the freedom of press, and you know, everything is open, everything is free. You can say what you want, think how you want. Nobody tells you what to do and how to think. And unfortunately, in Russia, it's not this way. And I think I'm already talking too much.
No.
You know, Vlad, I was in the former life, I was a senior defense official.
Yes.
And I remember a Soviet colleague, well, he was saying to me, "You accuse us of having no freedom of speech. This is a lie. We have perfect freedom of speech in the Soviet Union." He said, "It's true, there is a problem of freedom after speech."
Let's put it this way. The rabbis know that if they drive the car and have a traffic violation, they are risking to be kicked out of Russia. It will be used against them.
Yeah, well,
so they drive very carefully.
Yeah. Freedom after speech is the issue.
Yeah.
Someone asked what the name of a rabbi city is. It's Dnipro, formerly Dnipropetrovsk. It's been renamed because of decommunization, which was a communist. Now it's the same name as the region and the river of Dnipro. Someone is asking how you can get UJE books to those who are interested. How would they find the information about your publications, Beryl?
Well, first of all, we have a website, Ukrainian Jewish Encounter. Just go to the website, number one. Number two, if you just do a Google on Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, you will find our website, ukrainianjewishencounter.org. If we can use the good offices of Tablet,
Mhm.
Maybe we can invite viewers, listeners, guests to write in, and we'll be happy to respond and send copies of the publication to you in response. There are a number. There is the exhibit catalog from a traveling museum exhibit that tells the story of a journey through the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter from antiquity to 1914.
Great book.
Wonderful. I can praise it. It's the work of my wife, Alti Rodal, who's co-director with Adrian Kartitsky of UJE. And there's another book which you refer to, which is A Century of Coexistence by Professor Magoshi and Professor Petrovsky Stern. And we'll be happy to send you the books and other UJE materials to anybody who wants them. As I say, make your interest known. You can write to me. You can write to Alti.
Also live at tabletmag.com. That's live at tabletmag.com. And we will put whoever wants to be in touch with UJE for whatever is needed. So just write us and we'll pass along the information.
And I want to invite all of you to the city of Dnipro. Please come visit. You will be surprised. We have a beautiful city with the longest boardwalk in Europe, a 20-kilometer boardwalk with a beautiful river, big Jewish community, many museums and theaters, and so please come. You can fly to Kiev and then to Dnipro, and we guarantee you a good time.
And you can even stay.
An joyful visit.
And the rabbi will even house you in his hotel.
Yes, yes.
There's a great hotel at the Menorah Center.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lovely place. Well worth the visit. Dnipro is a fascinating city, and the Menorah Center is just a fantastic place.
Thank you.
We have a few other questions. In fact, lots of interesting questions. We have a quirky question. Why not? Someone asked, Farrell, are you related to the Rodal family from Pittsburgh and the Rodal family in Los Angeles? And was Rabbi Menachem Rodel of any relation to you?
Was which rabbi?
Menachem Rodel.
Oh,
Menachem.
Yes.
Well, there are Menachem Rodel, connection with Pittsburgh and LA, was my younger brother. He passed away a few years ago, alas, the nature rabbi. So my mother was an orphan girl in Mizirich, a famous city in Volhynia. And I carry the name of a Chabad rabbi, Ben Dov Ber, but it's also the name of the Maggid of Mizirich, Dov Ber. And town was 1/3 Jewish, 1/3 Ukrainian, 1/3 Polish, very typical. But from that young woman who left Mizirich as an orphan girl, there are now Chabad rabbis on every continent, and something can be several hundred children, great-children, great-grandchildren. It's an extraordinary story. So Rodal's a well-known name. It's yes. So the short answer is yes, I'm related to the Rodals. The home was moved from Europe by the events of the war, obviously, to Montreal, and then spread across the globe. As Rabbi Kamenetsky might sum it up in a phrase, ufaratzta.
Yes.
I'm on mute. Okay. We have a few other questions. Let's get to a controversial one. We have one from Melech Shechet. Why is the Ukrainian government office not notified for not implementing the international agreements to save Jewish grave sites? Beryl?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. It was muffled.
It was muffled. Sorry. Okay. The Ukrainian government offices were not only notified for not, it's a bit of garbled syntax in the spelling of the question, were not notified for not implementing the international agreement to save Jewish grave sites.
It sounds a very technical question to me, so I'm going to leave it to Rabbi Kamenetsky, rabbi to rabbi.
The situation in Lviv, I already mentioned it, is complicated.
This is a Lviv.
Lviv. I mentioned before Lviv. I know the mayor of the city. I know Melech Sheikhat, and it's complicated. And I think there is a lot of tragic misunderstanding between the sides. And I really hope things work out, because I spoke to the mayor, who visits quite often Dnipro, and I know Rabbi Sheikhat, and I know the Rabbi Bold, and I think things can work out. There is a lot of.
Very briefly, in brief strokes, short strokes, tell us just a little bit of what the situation is. If people who are not in Ukraine, what is the problem?
You know, in many cases in Ukraine, there needs to be, you have to develop a relationship with the local authorities. You have to develop the right relationship. You know, there is no rules in Ukraine. It's not, the country is not so organized. You know, it's a lot depends on personal relationships and how you represent the question. Really, you know, it's not Germany. Germany, you have the law, you have the paper, and this is how things will be. Or maybe in the US. In Ukraine, it's all как договорились, you know, like how you make up and how you explain it and how you. So I think more effort has to be put in to the relationship with the mayor, with the local authorities. To fight with them is not going to work. It has to become their interest. They have to want to do it, because this is how they will become internationally recognized by the world Jewish community. So you need to come to them with a positive approach. This is how things would usually work here.
Well,
I think what the rabbi is also saying is that personalities matter, maybe more in Ukraine than in other places, and we'll leave it at that.
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. I didn't have the words. This is what I meant.
Yes. I interrupted you, Vlad.
We're almost out of time, but I think we have maybe one or two more questions time for. Tell me, what about the Israeli relationship with Ukraine on government to government level? What is it that the Israelis are doing for Ukrainians? What are Ukrainians doing for Israelis? And also, let's not forget that on both the Russian and the Israeli border, you now have both on the Israeli and the Ukrainian border, you now have Russian troops. Russia is now a neighbor to both Kiev and Jerusalem. Any thoughts on this, being a government frontman?
Well, I don't represent any government, but I can tell you that you can have a meeting with the Israeli cabinet, the previous one. You could have a meeting with the present one. You could have a meeting with the senior people in the Knesset, all conducted in Ukrainian. All conducted in Ukrainian. So Yuli Edelstein, for example, is from Chernovtsi, Zev Elkin, also from. It's a special relationship. There is also the complicating factor of power, geopolitics, and the business of states. So the Soviet Union, Russia has a seat on the Security Council. That is a Security Council veto. As you say, it has relationships, military relationships with Iran. It has borders on the, a border in Israel and Syria. There have to be regular. So there are constraints in what Israel could and might do in relation to Ukraine because of the fact that an Israeli government has responsibility for the basic and the security of the country. You have to take the Russian interest into account. For all of that, the relationship between Israel and Ukraine at the state level is very close. And there is Tzvika Magen, for example, was Israel's first ambassador to an independent Russia, and Israel's first ambassador to an independent Ukraine, all at the same. There are close relationships, and but complex, not mysterious, but complex. And it's a relationship that has to be handled on the Israeli side with great care.
I think Ukraine is a big ally and friend of Israel, and all the votes and the UN always in favor of Israel. In our city, in the time of the Gaza conflict, the mayor Boris Filatov hanged the Israeli flag and the city and the city building, showing support. Our president, his whole family lives in Israel. He's a big friend. And everybody is worried of our neighbor. You know, Israel is worried about him and Ukraine is worried. We basically share the same issue.
So may I continue on this front? Of course, what the rabbi says is correct, but I take the health front. Israel has their special health relationships between Ukraine and Ukrainian medical authorities and Israel. President Poroshenko would go to Israel for treatment. The Israeli model of healthcare is more accessible for Ukrainians than, say, the American or the European. It's closer. It's less expensive. There are many. The UJE hosted an event in Kiev to mark the 75th anniversary of Israel's independence, and it brought together Israeli and Ukrainian leaders to talk about Israel's example of state and nation building. What lessons might there be for Ukraine? It was a very productive and interesting session. It wasn't a question of teaching Ukrainians anything, but there are lessons to be extracted from how you go about building an independent country. Israel and Ukraine, Jews and Ukrainians share this in common. Both ancient homelands building modern identities in newly independent states. Extraordinarily parallel experiences. And let me talk for a moment about diaspora. So Rabbi Michael Melchior.
Come, I think Boris Loshkin is about to join us. I mean, we're going to have.
I will be quiet as soon as Boris comes aboard.
Yeah, keep speaking. I'm gonna try to get him on the thing. But this is really amazing. At the 8:15 line, we might have to extend this for just a second, or a few minutes, because we do have the president. Go speak. Go continue on. Let me just find him. I'm trying to find him. He's in the thing.
There he is.
Hello.
Mr. Loshkin.
Hello, Vlad. Hello.
Shalom, shalom, Boris.
Shalom, shalom. Hello, Beryl. I'm very sorry because I told Vlad that I'm in the sea by sailing boat, and we just found the safe harbor. Maybe it's a sign, Rabbi. What do you think? Because it was great waves. And I asked my captain to do all the best to find the safe harbor, and we found it minutes ago.
Praise the Lord. Baruch Hashem.
We are going to have to extend this talk. Whoever wants to go can go, but Mr. Loshkin sailed out of a storm to see us. We cannot end this without having an important conversation with him. This is great. It actually made me very happy that he gets here at exactly 8:15 as we're about to wrap it up. We have almost all the Loshkin. Thank you for joining us. Tell us, what is it like being the president of the Ukrainian Jewish community?
Excuse me, would you repeat the question?
What is it like being the president of Ukrainian Jews?
I think first of all, the most important I'm Jew, and I try to do all my best to develop Ukrainian Jewish community, and not only Ukrainian Jewish communities. For me, Ukraine is one of the most important Jewish places in the world. It's one of the most important mentally, and there are a lot of Jews in Ukraine, and it's a great honor for me to drive the Jewish movement and to support the state of Israel in these hard times, and to support the Ukrainian power to build independent Ukraine. And as for me, Ukrainian history is impossible without Jewish history. Jewish people live today's territory of Ukraine for more than 1,000 years. And a lot of religious leaders, a lot of politicians, a lot of scientists, a lot of businessmen, a lot of musicians. It's a great history, and I think that we should to continue this movement, like Rabbi Kamenetsky, who makes a great job for not only for Dnipro community, not only as for me for Jewish community of Ukraine, but for the all Jews in the world, and as well as Mr. Adal and Mr. Timurtei, and they support a lot of important initiatives worldwide connected with the Ukrainian Jews. And we work very actively with the issues of history of Jews, and we launched this year Institute of History of Ukrainian Jews in Tel Aviv University. We are preparing, and we will present it in several months, the book with all names of righteous among the nations in Ukraine. It's more than 2,600 names, and stories about their activities, their support of Jews, and we launched as well, and we will present it also in several months, the series of books. It's the best books of different authors, not only Ukrainian, but in Ukrainian language, called Еврейская библиотека, Jewish library. And it would be books about history of State of Israel, about the most important the most important leaders of Ukrainian Jewish community, but and Ukrainian Jews who built the State of Israel, Golda Meir and others. So this year we will present the history of State of Israel in Ukrainian, the book about Golda Meir, the book about the Mossad, etc. So we try to be active in different fields, and as well, one of the most important initiatives launched by Jewish Confederation of Ukraine is the Ukrainian Jewish Forum, Kiev Jewish Forum, which is already one of the most important, is for me, events in European Jewry. And we see this as a platform to discuss the important issues of international Jewry, Ukrainian Jewry, and State of Israel. And I think that we will continue this October. So there are a lot of important initiatives we launched, which are in the process, and of course with support of our friends from Mr. Timurtei and Mr. Adal, and the most important regional community of Ukraine is Dnipro community. I see it's for me what built by by Rabbi Kamenetsky, with the great support of Mr. Bogolyubov in Dnipro. It's incredible. I think it's the greatest regional community in Europe, or maybe in the world. So I'm honored to know these people and to support the initiatives.
Ms. Volosky, thank you again for joining. This is great. Tell me, I really enjoyed taking part in the first Kiev Forum. The second one was online because life was sadly online for the last 16 months. A horrible time for all of us. The third one will be in Kiev and it'll be open to business. It'll be live.
Yes, but maybe we will make it also online, because the situation is changing. You see with the COVID every day, and for instance in UK with a great tempo of vaccination with this new Delta stam of virus and Indian stam of virus situation again becoming worse. So maybe we will have the event also online, because I can't guarantee, the high level of participants to travel to Kyiv in the end of September or beginning of October. Also, because this period of time could be the next wave, by opinion of some researchers. But anyway, we will have, as for sure, high level event online or offline or combined, end of September, beginning of October.
Okay, I look forward to coming and it was really interesting. I didn't get to see many of the talks one because it was online. Tell me, Ukraine has as its current president a gentleman of Jewish origin descent, one who's very cognizant of this fact, and he even playfully brought it up during the presidential campaign. What does it mean for the Jewish community when the commander-in-chief is a Jew?
There are several important issues. First of all, it shows that there is no high level of anti-Semitism in Ukraine, because Ukrainians voted president who's Jew. And as for me, the most important now is that he's a president of Ukraine, and he works to develop Ukraine, to build very successful state. And I hope that he will continue to build successful independent Ukraine with support of communities, support of minorities, and as for me, it's a good sign. It's a good sign. And by the way, it's also the sign that Ukraine and Jewish people is like one. I think, Rabbi, maybe you understand what I mean. It's like one. I forgot this organism. How.
One DNA. One DNA.
Yes. Yes.
It's true.
Okay.
I want to mention to you, I want to say one word about Boris. To be a politician, to be a very wealthy person, to be a leader number one of the Jewish community without fighting with anybody. Nobody ever got offended by Boris. Nobody was hurt. Everybody is respecting him and loving him. This is a special art. Politics, when you are successful in business, you have many fights, you have many arguments. How do you say, master straw? How do you say it in English? To be able to build a fortune, be successful in business, very liked by the Jewish community, very popular. To be in politics as the head of the #2 influential person in Ukraine, and not one bad word you would hear from any Ukrainian about Boris. So we really appreciate it. We respect you very much, and I think that this is something unbelievable. That being so popular, and I think Boris has a lot to do with the fact that the Jewish community is so respectful and liked in Ukraine. So thank you, Boris.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's a great honor for me to have your words. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Your sound is getting kind of bad, so let me just ask one or two more questions of Boris while we have him on the line. Mr. Loshkin, what is your agenda? What do you want to get done? What did you come into the office wanting to change or wanting to implement?
You mean with the as Jewish Confederation of Ukraine?
Yes, as the head of a Jewish Confederation of Ukraine, what is it that you want?
We have several important issues, and this is our pillars, our goals. You know, we should work on support of Jewish community, all Jewish communities, Jewish organizations of Ukraine, support Jewish initiatives in Ukraine. Secondly, we support State of Israel. Thirdly, we work on history of Ukrainian Jews. And we think that this is a very important issue to show the world, to show people from New York to Tokyo, the history of Ukrainian Jews and the role of Ukraine in Jewish history. And the fourth important goal is memory of Holocaust. And one of our initiatives is Righteous Among the Nations of Your City. And now by our initiatives, by last 2 years, more than 3 years, sorry, by last 3 years, more than 60 cities in different Ukrainian 60 streets in different Ukrainian cities and towns recalled by names of righteous among nations, Ukrainians who saved Jews during World War II, during the Holocaust. And we show by this that these people, they were Ukrainians, and we want young generation who, to our pity, not always knows what is Holocaust, should think about it again and should see that on the street there were people who saved Jews during the Holocaust, and these people were Ukrainians. And by the way, it's important also to show that Ukrainians are very tolerant, real heroes. And it is also very important for friendship between Ukrainians and Jews. And the fifth one, it's a lot of info about Israel, about Jewish people for Ukrainians. It's our project, I told you, Ukrainian Library. And of course, we are very active in international organizations and like World Jewish Congress, American Jewish Committee, European Jewish Congress, etc. And we would like to show in these organizations that the Ukrainian Jewish community is one of the most important Jewish communities in the world. And we are, as a part of Jewish diaspora, is with Israel and with Jewish world in the world. Vlad, sorry, I don't hear you.
I'm unmuted. Okay. We have a question from Tablet Live to all panelists. Jewish history is not studied well at Ukrainian schools, or so it is thought. Looking at the school books, one would not learn much about the Jewish history of Ukraine. Perhaps our speakers have ideas about how to change that situation. Is there anything that can be done?
This is what I told already. Our project, Righteous Among the Nations in Your City. We would like not only to have recalled streets and some info about these heroes, but also we would like to launch, and now we are in process of discussions with the local powers, lessons in schools with histories of these heroes, these Ukrainians who saved Jewish people. And we would like these histories to have local, so in your city, it would be one history, in another city, another one about another person, but this person from this city. Sometimes, by the way, their families are still there. And some of these righteous among the nations, by the way, are still alive. And we think that this is one of the easiest and most efficient way. Another one, it's Jewish library in Ukrainian language. So we want to promote Jewish history. I have another project, by the way, in my pipeline, but I think I will tell it more in details a little bit later. But I think we need to have a really very well detailed and easy reading history of Ukrainian Jews. I was very surprised that there is no one well done history of Ukrainian Jews published in any languages. So there are some parts of this, but there is no really interesting, detailed from ancient times till now, not only about Jews, but about Jewish culture, about religious, etc., connected with Ukraine. And I think it would be one of our projects for future.
That's great. Beryl, do you have any questions for Mr. Loshkin?
Well, good to see you, Boris.
Good to see you, Beryl.
You're speaking, as it were, to the history of the Jewish history in Ukraine. Number one, Jewish history in Ukraine is Ukrainian history. So we're making progress in having that story understood by Ukrainians as part of their national history. Our stories are incomplete without each other, right? So in UJE, Boris, you will find a willing partner in producing the project you've just talked about. You also mentioned the word diaspora. So in Israel, there's a program called Birthright. Israel, the diaspora is not just an asset for Israel. The diaspora is also an obligation. So just as diaspora Jews support Israel, Israel has to support diaspora Jews. And so the diaspora has this two-sided relationship to the homeland. To support the homeland, but the homeland has to support the diaspora. And Jews are also part of that in relation to the Ukrainian diaspora. So Ukraine needs to work on how it can support the diaspora. And it would be interesting to think about how the Jewish Ukrainian diaspora plays a role in that too. So there is a possible three-cornered relationship. The ancestral homelands of Ukrainians and Jews, Ukraine and Israel, and the diasporas all working together. It's a project for the near term and the future.
You're right, and I think it's really a project for near future. Yeah.
Gentlemen, as much as we could keep going, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. I think we've gone a little bit over the time limit, and I think it's great that we got people to actually see Boris. The number of people is going to start dwindling because attention spans are limited. I'm grateful to all of you. You're all very thoughtful, very intelligent, very honorable gentlemen. I'm very proud that Tablet had a chance to put together this really interesting, very useful, and I think even critically important panel on the present of the Jews. I hope that everyone will join us again in a week and a day, 8 days from now, on the 24th, same time, 1 o'clock New York time, EDS, 6 o'clock in London, 7 o'clock in Paris, where I am, and 8 o'clock in Dnipro and Kiev, where Rabbi Kamenetsky is. Again, I'm grateful to all of you. This has been a fantastic discussion, and I hope that all of you will continue to do your good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Boris
Tablet.
and Vladislav. Nice to see all of you. Bye.
Thank you.